Blood coated Sadie Morgan's hands as she pressed them against the wound on her side, her ragged breath forming small clouds in the cold Montana air of 1885. She stumbled forward through the snow, leaving a crimson trail behind her as the lights of the small frontier town flickered in the distance like fading hope. Sadie had been running for 3 days. 3 days since she'd stolen the money from Jenkins. 3 days since she'd shot him when he'd tried to force himself on her. 3 days of hiding, hunted like an animal. Now, as the blood seeped between her fingers and her vision blurred, she knew she wouldn't make it much further. The lights of the saloon grew closer, sounds of a piano and raucous laughter spilling into the night. Sadie's legs finally gave out on the steps, her body crumpling into the snow. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was a pair of worn leather boots stopping beside her head. Xavier "Hawk" Montgomery had seen plenty of death in his 32 years. First as a soldier in the war, then as a Texas Ranger, and now as a bounty hunter tracking outlaws across the untamed West. He'd been playing cards in the saloon when the commotion started outside. Something in him compelled him to investigate, though he normally minded his own business. "Get Doc Sullivan," he barked at the onlookers as he knelt beside the woman's prone form. Blood had soaked through her dress and coat, staining the snow beneath her. Her face was pale as the moon, dark lashes stark against her skin. He checked for a pulse, finding it weak but present. "She's one of Jenkins' girls," someone muttered from the crowd. "Heard she robbed him and ran." "Heard she shot him too," another added. Hawk ignored them, carefully lifting the unconscious woman. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in his arms despite the calluses on her hands and the old scars he could see on her exposed skin. This wasn't some pampered city girl she'd known hardship. "Where you taking her, Hawk?" asked the bartender who'd wandered outside to see what the commotion was about. "Doc's place," Hawk replied simply. "Tell anyone looking for her that she died. Understand?" The bartender hesitated, then nodded. He'd known Hawk for 3 years, and while the bounty hunter was a man of few words, his reputation for fair dealing and straight shooting had earned him respect. Hawk carried Sadie through the back streets to avoid curious eyes. Doc Sullivan's small house sat at the edge of town, a lantern burning in the window despite the late hour. "Got a patient for you, Doc," Hawk announced as he kicked the door with his boot. The door swung open to reveal a white-haired man with spectacles perched on his nose. "Another bar fight casualty, Montgomery?" he asked, then froze when he saw the woman in Hawk's arms. "Bring her in, quickly." Doc Sullivan cleared his examination table with one sweep of his arm, sending papers and instruments clattering to the floor. "What happened?" "Don't know. Found her collapsed outside the saloon. Gunshot wound, I think." The doctor worked quickly, cutting away Sadie's bloodied clothing while Hawk stood awkwardly by the door, hat in hand. "You can go, Montgomery. I'll handle it from here." But Hawk didn't move. "Is she going to make it?" Doc Sullivan's hands stilled for a moment. "Hard to say. She's lost a lot of blood and there's infection setting in, bullets still in there too." "But you can save her." The doctor looked at him curiously. "Since when do you care about some drifter girl?" "Thought you were only interested in bringing in bounties." Hawk set his jaw. "Just do what you can, Doc. I'll pay. Suit yourself. But I need to work now, so either help me or get out." For the next hour, Hawk assisted as Doc Sullivan extracted the bullet, cleaned the wound, and stitched Sadie up. Throughout it all, she remained unconscious, which the doctor said was a blessing. "She'll need looking after," Doc Sullivan said as he washed his hands in a basin. "Can't keep her here, people talk, and if someone's looking for her." "I'll take her to my cabin," Hawk said without hesitation. "No one bothers me up there." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "This isn't like you, Montgomery." Hawk didn't respond. He couldn't explain the pull he felt toward this stranger, the need to protect her. Maybe it was the way she'd been fighting to survive, or maybe he was just tired of death. Either way, he wasn't going to let whoever shot her finish the job. By dawn, Hawk had Sadie settled in his cabin in the foothills outside town. It was a simple place, one room with a stone fireplace, a bed, table, and few other furnishings, but it was clean and defensible. He'd built it with his own hands after deciding to settle in the area, a decision that had surprised even him given his typically nomadic lifestyle. He sat in a chair by the bed, cleaning his Winchester rifle while keeping an eye on his unconscious guest. Her breathing had steadied somewhat, though fever flushed her cheeks. Doc had given him medicine, instructions, and a stern warning that the next few days would determine whether she lived or died. It was near noon when Sadie finally stirred. Her eyes fluttered open hazel, Hawk noted and immediately filled with panic. She tried to sit up, crying out in pain. "Easy," Hawk said, setting aside his rifle and moving toward the bed. "You'll tear your stitches." Sadie recoiled from him, pressing herself against the headboard despite the obvious agony it caused her. "Who are you? Where am I?" Name's Xavier Montgomery. Most call me Hawk. You're at my cabin, about 3 miles outside of Redemption. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "You collapsed in town last night with a bullet in your side. Doc Sullivan patched you up." Her eyes darted around the cabin, looking for escape routes, weapons, anything. "Why did you bring me here? Would you rather I'd left you to bleed out in the snow?" She didn't answer, just clutched the blanket tighter. "They'll be looking for me." "Who? Jenkins?" Fear flashed across her face. "You know about Jenkins, only what I heard, that you robbed him and shot him." Hawk sat back down, giving her space. "Don't much care either way." "Man's got a reputation that speaks for itself." Sadie watched him warily. "So what do you want? A reward for turning me in?" Hawk almost smiled at that. "If I wanted to turn you in, I'd have done it already. I'm not interested in Jenkins' money." "Everyone wants something." "Right now, all I want is for you to rest and heal up. We can figure out the rest later." She stared at him, disbelief evident in her expression. "I can't pay you, didn't ask you to." "Then why help me?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm not worth saving." Hawk's eyes met hers, blue and steady as a mountain lake. "That's a damn lie." He stood up, moving to the fireplace to stoke the flames. "We all got worth, whether we see it or not." For the first time, Sadie seemed to truly look at the man who had saved her. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a lean hardness that spoke of a life lived outdoors. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, a strong jaw covered in stubble, and those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. He wore simple clothes, worn but clean, and moved with the confident grace of a predator. "You're a bounty hunter," she realized aloud, noticing the wanted posters rolled up on the table. Hawk nodded. "Sometimes, when the money's good and the man deserves catching." "And you think Jenkins deserves catching?" "Don't know, but I've heard stories." He handed her a cup of water. "Drink this. Doc said to keep you hydrated." Sadie accepted the cup with shaking hands. "I didn't rob him," she said quietly after taking a sip. "It was my money, payment for services." She couldn't meet his eyes. "When I tried to leave, he wouldn't let me, said I belonged to him now." Hawk's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the poker he held. "So you shot him." "He was going to kill me. Said if he couldn't have me, no one would." She set the cup down. "I didn't mean to shoot him. The gun just went off when we struggled." "You hit him in the shoulder, I think. There was so much blood and I panicked. I grabbed what I could and ran." She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "His men have been tracking me since." Hawk nodded, processing this information. "Jenkins is a powerful man in these parts, owns the mine, half the businesses in town." "I know," Sadie whispered. "That's why I'm as good as dead. Not while you're here." Hawk set the poker down and checked the window, a habit born of years living on alert. "No one comes up this way without me knowing about it. You can't protect me forever, and once I'm gone, they'll come after you too. Let me worry about that." He moved to a trunk in the corner, pulling out a clean shirt. "Here, yours was ruined. It'll be big, but it's better than nothing." Sadie accepted the shirt cautiously. "Thank you. Rest now, I'll make some food." As Hawk busied himself at the small stove, Sadie sank back against the pillows, exhaustion overwhelming her despite her fear. There was something about this gruff man that made her feel safer than she had in years. Maybe it was the calm confidence he exuded, or the way he hadn't judged her when she mentioned her services. Whatever it was, for the first time since she'd fled Jenkins' establishment, she allowed herself to hope that she might actually survive. Over the next week, Sadie's condition improved steadily under Hawk's care. He changed her bandages, brought her broth and tea, and even read to her from one of the few books. He owned a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets that surprised her with its worn pages and careful handling. "Didn't take you for a poetry man," she commented one evening as he read by firelight. Hawk looked almost embarrassed. "My mother taught me to read with this book. It's all I have left of her. What happened to her? Consumption. I was 12. He closed the book. "My father took to the bottle after, left me to fend for myself by 14. Sadie's expression softened. "I lost my parents in a fire when I was 16, had no family to take me in. How'd you end up with Jenkins?" She looked away. "It was winter. I was starving. He offered a warm place to sleep and food." Her laugh was bitter. "Didn't tell me what the cost would be until it was too late." Hawk didn't press further. He knew enough about the world to fill in the blanks. As days passed, they fell into a routine. Hawk would hunt in the mornings, bringing back rabbits or a grouse for their meals. Sadie, growing stronger, insisted on helping around the cabin, washing dishes, mending clothes, even attempting to cook when she could stand for more than a few minutes without pain. They learned about each other in small pieces. Hawk had fought for the Union, though he rarely spoke of the war. After, he drifted west, working as a lawman before turning to bounty hunting. Sadie had been a schoolteacher's assistant before losing her position when the teacher's husband took an unwelcome interest in her. With no references and few options, she drifted from town to town before ending up in Redemption. "You're good with words," Hawk observed one night as Sadie wrote in a small journal he'd brought her from town. "Never got the hang of writing myself. Can read well enough, but my letters look like chicken scratch." Sadie smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face and caught Hawk off guard with its beauty. "I could teach you if you'd like." That night marked a shift between them. The wariness in Sadie's eyes began to fade, replaced by something warmer when she looked at her rescuer. For his part, Hawk found himself lingering in the cabin rather than seeking the solitude of the woods. He discovered he enjoyed her company, her quiet strength, the way she hummed softly when she thought he couldn't hear. 2 weeks after bringing her to his cabin, Hawk returned from town with troubling news. "Jenkins is offering $500 for information about you," he said without preamble as he hung his coat by the door. Sadie froze in the act of setting the table. "He knows I'm alive then." "Seems so. Word is he's hired some men from outside the territory, professional manhunters." "I should go," Sadie said, her hands trembling. "Tonight, I've imposed on you too long, and now I'm putting you in danger." "And go where?" Hawk's voice was gentle but firm. "You're still healing, and it's 20 miles to the next town." "I don't know, but I can't stay here. These men, they won't just kill me, Hawk. They'll—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Hawk crossed the room in 3 strides, taking her shaking hands in his. It was the first time he'd touched her beyond tending to her wound, and the contact sent an unexpected warmth through both of them. "I won't let anyone hurt you, Sadie. I give you my word." She looked up at him, tears gathering in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "I know enough." His voice was rough with emotion he rarely showed. "I know you're brave and strong. I know you deserve better than what life's handed you so far. But your life here was lonely before you came." The admission seemed to surprise even him. He released her hands, stepping back slightly. "Stay, at least until you're fully healed. Then, if you still want to go, I won't stop you." Sadie studied his face, searching for deceit or ulterior motives and finding none. "All right," she finally agreed, "but we need a plan." "I can't hide in this cabin forever." Hawk nodded, relief evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. "I've been thinking about that. There's a ranch for sale down near the border. Owner died last month and his widow's heading back east. It's remote, good grazing land." "You want to buy a ranch? Been saving to settle somewhere permanent. Bounty hunting's not a job for an old man, and I'm not getting any younger." He gave her a rare half-smile. "Could use a partner who knows her letters." Sadie's heart skipped at the implication. "Are you asking me to go with you?" Just presenting an option. Hawk moved to the stove, giving her space to consider. "You could start fresh there. No one would know about Jenkins or your past. And what would I be to you in this new life?" The question hung in the air between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Hawk turned to face her, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. Whatever you want to be, friend, partner, more if that's what you decide, but there'd be no obligation, you'd be free to go your own way. The offer stunned Sadie. Freedom, true freedom, was something she'd almost forgotten was possible, and here was this man, this quiet, honorable man, offering it to her without demanding anything in return. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Don't say anything yet, think on it. He handed her a bowl of stew. Eat, you need your strength. That night, Sadie lay awake long after Hawk had settled into his bedroll by the fire. He'd insisted she take the bed despite her protests, and that small act of chivalry was just one of many that had slowly chipped away at the walls around her heart. Could she trust this new feeling growing inside her? This warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled, the sense of safety she felt in his presence. Or was it merely gratitude confused for something deeper? Sadie had learned early that men's kindness usually came with a price. Yet Hawk had asked for nothing, had respected her space and her choices. He'd treated her not as a broken thing to be pitied or a body to be used, but as a person of value. And now he was offering her a future one she never thought possible. The next morning, Sadie woke to find Hawk already gone, a note on the table saying he'd gone hunting and would return by midday. She used the opportunity to test her strength, walking around the cabin, then venturing onto the small porch. The crisp mountain air filled her lungs, and for the first time in years she felt something like peace. The sound of approaching hooves shattered the moment. Sadie ducked back inside, heart pounding. Through the window, she could see 3 riders approaching strangers, not Hawk. Fear clutched at her throat as she frantically looked around for a weapon. Hawk kept his rifle with him, but there was a pistol in the drawer by the bed. She grabbed it with shaking hands, checking that it was loaded as he'd taught her during the long evenings by the fire. A heavy knock sounded at the door. "Montgomery, open up," a gruff voice called. "Got a message from town." Sadie pressed herself against the wall beside the window, trying to control her breathing. These men weren't from redemption, she was sure of it. The way they sat their horses, the guns prominently displayed, these were the manhunters Hawk had mentioned. "He ain't here," another voice said. "Let's check inside." The door rattled as someone tried the handle, finding it locked. "Break it down," ordered the first voice. Sadie raised the pistol as the door shuddered under a heavy boot. One more kick and it splintered open, revealing a large man with a scar running down his face. He spotted her immediately, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his features. "Well, well, if it ain't Jenkins' runaway whore." "Stay back," Sadie warned, the pistol steady in her hands despite her fear. The man laughed, stepping into the cabin. "Put that down before you hurt yourself, darlin'. Mr. Jenkins wants you back alive, but he didn't say nothing about undamaged. I'm not going back." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "I'll die first. That can be arranged too, if you prefer." He took another step. "But seems a waste, pretty thing like you." The other 2 men entered behind him, spreading out to block any escape route. Sadie backed up until she hit the wall, the pistol now aimed at the leader's chest. "Last warning," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Leave now." The scarred man lunged forward and Sadie fired. The shot was deafening in the small cabin, the recoil jarring her wounded side. The man staggered back, blood blooming on his shoulder just as she'd hit Jenkins. "You bitch," he snarled, drawing his own gun. Before he could fire, another shot rang out and the man dropped to his knees, a look of surprise on his face as he fell forward. Hawk stood in the doorway, rifle raised, expression cold as winter. "Drop your weapons," he ordered the remaining 2 men. Now, the manhunters hesitated, calculating their odds against the deadly calm in Hawk's eyes. "He's just one man," one of them said. "We can take him." "You're welcome to try," Hawk's voice was ice. "But you'll join your friend there." Something in his tone convinced them. They slowly placed their guns on the floor. "Now back out. Get on your horses and ride. Tell Jenkins the woman is under my protection." Hawk stepped aside to let them pass. "And if I see either of you again, I won't be so merciful." The men retreated, dragging their fallen comrade with them. Hawk kept his rifle trained on them until they were mounted and riding away, then quickly closed and barricaded the broken door. "Are you hurt?" He asked Sadie, crossing to her in 2 strides. She shook her head, still clutching the pistol. You came back just in time. Heard the horses. He gently took the gun from her trembling hands. You did good, hit him clean. I didn't want to shoot anyone, she whispered. Not again. Hawk set the pistol aside and, after a moment's hesitation, pulled her into his arms. She went willingly, burying her face against his chest as delayed shock set in. It's all right, he murmured into her hair. You're safe now. They'll come back, Sadie said, with more men. Not today, they won't. He held her a moment longer, then reluctantly released her. But you're right, we can't stay here. The ranch you mentioned, too far to reach tonight. Hawk moved around the cabin, gathering essentials and stuffing them into saddlebags. We need somewhere closer. Somewhere they won't think to look. Where? I know a place. Old mining cabin up in the high country. Used it once when tracking a fugitive during a blizzard. He handed her a coat. Can you ride? Sadie nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. It's been a while, but yes. Good. We'll leave as soon as it's dark. They spent the afternoon preparing. Hawk showed Sadie how to reload the pistol and insisted she keep it with her. He packed food, blankets, and medical supplies, moving with the efficiency of a man accustomed to quick departures. As dusk fell, they slipped out the back of the cabin to where Hawk had hidden the horses in a stand of pines. He helped Sadie mount, his hands lingering briefly at her waist. Stay close, he instructed. The trail gets narrow in places. They rode through the gathering darkness, climbing steadily into the mountains. Sadie's side ached with the movement, but she gritted her teeth against the pain. Hawk led them on a winding path, doubling back and crossing streams to confuse any pursuers. It was well past midnight when they finally reached the mining cabin, little more than a shack built into the side of the mountain, hidden among a cluster of pines. Inside was a single room with a stone fireplace, a narrow cot, and few other comforts. It's not much, Hawk apologized as he lit a lantern, but it'll keep us warm and dry. Sadie sank onto the cot, exhaustion etched on her face. It's perfect. Hawk built a fire while Sadie organized their supplies. The domesticity of the moment struck her suddenly. This could have been any couple settling in for the night, not two people running for their lives. You should sleep, Hawk said once the fire was crackling. I'll keep watch. You need rest too. She patted the space beside her on the cot. It's big enough for both of us if we're careful, Hawk hesitated, clearly torn between propriety and practicality. I don't want to hurt your wound. You won't, she held his gaze. I trust you, Hawk. Those simple words seemed to affect him deeply. He nodded once, then checked the cabin's single window and door before removing his boots and gun belt. Carefully, he stretched out beside her, their bodies separated by inches that somehow felt both too much and too little. Thank you, Sadie said softly in the darkness, for everything. Hawk was silent for so long that she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then, quietly, when I found you that night, something changed for me. It was like finding a piece I didn't know was missing. Sadie turned her head to look at him, his profile illuminated by the firelight. I felt it too. That first day when I woke up in your cabin, you were a stranger, but somehow not. His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining. Whatever happens, Sadie, I want you to know that these weeks with you have been the best of my life. She squeezed his hand. Mine too. They fell asleep that way, hands clasped, a fragile connection in a dangerous world. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through the cabin's single window. Sadie woke to find herself curled against Hawk's chest, his arm protective around her shoulders. For a moment she allowed herself to savor the warmth and security of his embrace, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. He stirred, blue eyes opening to meet hers. Neither moved away. Morning, he said, voice rough with sleep. Morning, she replied, suddenly aware of how intimate their position was. A small smile touched his lips. Sleep well, better than I expected. She made no move to pull away, no nightmares. His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face, the touch gentle as a whisper. Good. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Hawk's gaze dropped to her lips, and Sadie felt herself leaning closer, drawn by an invisible force. A sound outside shattered the moment, a branch snapping under a heavy boot. Hawk was on his feet instantly, gun in hand. He motioned for Sadie to stay down as he moved silently to the window. "Two riders," he whispered. "Same ones from yesterday plus another." Fear knotted in Sadie's stomach. How did they find us? Must have tracked us despite the precautions. Hawk's mind raced through options. "There's a back way out through the old mine shaft. It comes out about half a mile up the mountain." "What about you?" "I'll hold them off, give you time to get away." "No," Sadie stood, ignoring the pain in her side. "I'm not leaving you." "Sadie, no," she repeated firmly. "I've spent my life running. I'm tired of it. If we go together." Their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Hawk nodded. "Together then, but we need to move now." He quickly gathered their essential supplies while Sadie pulled on her boots and coat. Hawk moved a heavy trunk to reveal a low doorway in the back wall of the cabin. "Stay close to me," he instructed, lighting a small lantern. "The tunnel's old and not entirely stable." They slipped into the narrow passage just as voices approached the cabin. The mine shaft was damp and cold, barely tall enough for Hawk to stand upright. Roots hung from the ceiling and the wooden supports creaked ominously in places. "Almost there," Hawk whispered after they'd been walking for what felt like hours. "Just around this bend." The passage suddenly widened into a small chamber with several branching tunnels. Hawk paused, frowning. "What's wrong?" Sadie asked. "This isn't right. There should just be one way through." He held the lantern higher, examining the different options. "Someone's been expanding the mine." A voice echoed behind them. Their pursuers had discovered the tunnel. "This way," Hawk decided, choosing the leftmost passage. "Stay quiet." They moved as quickly as they dared through the narrow tunnel. The air grew colder, fresher. They had to be nearing an exit. Hawk rounded a corner and suddenly stopped, throwing out an arm to halt Sadie. The tunnel ended in a sheer drop at least 30 feet down to a rocky stream bed. "Back," he whispered. "We'll try another. Too late for that, Montgomery." They turned to find the scarred man blocking the passage, gun aimed at Hawk's chest. His shoulder was bandaged, his face pale with pain but twisted in triumph. "Figured you might try the back way out. Old miners at the saloon told us all about these tunnels." He gestured with his gun. "Now drop your weapon." Hawk carefully set his rifle down. "You don't have to do this. Whatever Jenkins is paying you, I can match it." The man laughed. "This ain't just about money anymore. Your woman there shot me. That makes it personal." "I'm the one who shot you yesterday," Hawk said calmly. "She had nothing to do with it." "Liar. I saw her pull the trigger." His gaze shifted to Sadie, cold and calculating. "Jenkins wants her back alive, but he didn't specify what condition. Think I'll have some fun before I deliver her." Something dangerous flashed in Hawk's eyes. "You'll have to kill me first." "That's the plan." The man cocked his pistol. "Nothing personal, Montgomery, just business." Time seemed to slow. Sadie saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Hawk tensing to move. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, shoving Hawk aside as the shot rang out. Pain exploded in her shoulder, spinning her backward toward the edge of the drop. She felt herself falling, heard Hawk's anguished cry, and then there was nothing but air beneath her. The impact with the water below knocked the breath from her lungs. The current immediately caught her, pulling her downstream as she struggled to stay afloat with one arm useless from the gunshot. Cold numbed the pain but sapped her strength. Darkness edged her vision as she fought to keep her head above water. Just when she thought she couldn't fight anymore, strong arms wrapped around her, dragging her toward the shore. Hawk. Somehow, he jumped in after her. He pulled her onto a rocky bank, his hands frantically checking her wound. "Sadie, stay with me." "I'm here," she managed, teeth chattering. Cold relief washed over his face. "I thought I'd lost you." The man, with the gun, "won't be bothering us again." Something dark crossed Hawk's expression. "Can you stand? We need to move before the others come looking." With his help, Sadie got to her feet, swaying slightly. "Where will we go?" "There's a lined shack about 2 miles downstream, used by the cattle drivers in summer, should be abandoned now." He stripped off his wet coat and wrapped it around her despite his own shivering. "Can you make it?" Sadie nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure. "Together, remember?" His eyes softened and he pressed a kiss to her forehead. Together. The journey to the lined shack was a blur of pain and cold for Sadie. Hawk half carried her much of the way, his own exhaustion evident in the set of his shoulders but never slowing their pace. When they finally reached the small wooden structure tucked among a stand of cottonwoods, Sadie was barely conscious. Inside was Spartan but dry a small stove, a rough-hewn table, and a narrow bunk. Hawk immediately set about starting a fire in the stove while Sadie sank onto the bunk, her wet clothes clinging to her shivering form. "We need to get you warm and dry," Hawk said, his own voice unsteady with cold. "And I need to look at that wound," Sadie nodded weakly. Under normal circumstances, the thought of undressing before him would have filled her with anxiety, but survival overrode modesty. With his help, she removed her soaked outer garments, wincing as the movement jostled her injured shoulder. Hawk averted his eyes as much as possible, maintaining her dignity while he wrapped her in a blanket he found on a shelf. Only then did he attend to his own wet clothes, changing quickly into the spare shirt from his saddlebag, the only dry garment they had between them. Once the stove was radiating heat, he turned his attention to her wound. The bullet had passed clean through her shoulder, painful, but not immediately life-threatening if they could stop the bleeding and prevent infection. "This will hurt," he warned as he prepared to clean the wound with whiskey from a flask he kept in his saddlebag. Sadie gripped the edge of the bunk. "Do it." She bit back a scream as the alcohol burned through the wound, tears streaming down her face. Hawk worked quickly, his hands gentle but efficient as he bandaged her shoulder with strips torn from his spare shirt. "Why did you do it?" he asked softly when he was finished. "Push me out of the way." Sadie met his gaze, her eyes still bright with tears but resolute. "For the same reason you took me in that first night, because you matter to me." Hawk's expression cracked, revealing the emotion he usually kept so carefully controlled. "I could have lost you, but you didn't." She reached up with her good hand to touch his face. "You found me. You always find me." Something broke between them, then the last barrier of hesitation and doubt. Hawk leaned down, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with the intensity of feelings too long denied. Sadie responded with equal fervor, her hand sliding into his hair to hold him close. When they finally parted, both breathless, Hawk rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply, the words falling from his lips as naturally as breathing. "I think I have from the moment I found you." Tears filled Sadie's eyes, but these were different from the ones of pain before. "I love you too. I've been so afraid to admit it, even to myself." "No need to be afraid anymore." He brushed a tear from her cheek. "I'm not going anywhere." They spent the night in the line shack, Hawk holding Sadie carefully to avoid her injured shoulder. Outside, a storm moved in, rain lashing against the small windows as if to wash away the violence of the day. "What happens now?" Sadie asked as they lay together in the darkness. "Jenkins won't stop looking for me." Hawk was quiet for a moment, his hand making soothing circles on her back. "I've been thinking about that. Jenkins has power in this territory, but not everywhere." "You mean leave, go somewhere he can't reach?" "The ranch I mentioned, it's actually across the state line in Wyoming territory. Different jurisdiction. And I happen to know the territorial marshal there, a good man named Sullivan. If we tell him what happened, show him your wounds. You think he'd help us against someone like Jenkins?" "I know he would. Sullivan and I served together in the war. He owes me a favor and he hates men who abuse their power." Hawk shifted to look at her in the dim light. "It won't be easy at first. Building a ranch from almost nothing never is, but we'd be free." "We," Sadie repeated softly. "You still want me to come with you, more than anything." He touched her face gently. "But only if that's what you want too. I meant what I said before. You're free to choose your own path." Sadie thought about the life he was offering, hard work under an open sky, building something honest together, falling asleep in his arms each night and waking beside him each morning. It was more than she'd ever dared to dream possible. "Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger with certainty. "That's what I want, a life with you." His smile in the darkness was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Then that's what we'll do." They left at first light, Hawk having salvaged a horse from the line shack's small corral. He helped Sadie mount, then climbed up behind her, one arm secure around her waist to steady her as they rode. The journey to Wyoming took 3 days. They traveled cautiously, avoiding main trails and settlements, stopping frequently to rest Sadie's injured shoulder. By the time they crossed the territorial border, some of the tension had eased from Hawk's posture. "Almost there," he said on the morning of the third day. "Another few hours to Laramie, where Sullivan keeps his office." Sadie leaned back against his chest, drawing strength from his solid presence. Despite the pain and exhaustion, hope had taken root in her heart, hope for a future she'd thought forever beyond her reach. Laramie was larger than Redemption, but still maintained the rough-edged feel of a frontier town. Hawk led them directly to a solid brick building marked U.S. Marshal and helped Sadie dismount. Marshal Sullivan proved to be everything Hawk had described: a fair-minded man with a strong sense of justice. He listened to their story without interruption, his expression growing darker when Sadie showed the scars from her time with Jenkins, including the recent bullet wound. "Jenkins has no authority in this territory," Sullivan assured them when they'd finished. "And even if he did, what you've described amounts to kidnapping, imprisonment, and attempted murder on his part." "He'll say I stole from him," Sadie said, "that I shot him first." Sullivan's eyes were kind but determined. "Let him. His word against yours, and I know which one I believe. Besides, we have evidence of his men tracking you across territorial lines with intent to harm. That's federal jurisdiction now." "What does that mean for us?" Hawk asked. "It means you're under my protection while you're in Wyoming territory. I'll send a wire to the federal marshals in Montana, let them know what's happened." Sullivan leaned back in his chair. "In the meantime, I hear old man Peterson's place is still for sale. Good land, fair price." Hawk nodded. "That was our thought. I'll put in a good word with the bank." Sullivan stood, extending his hand first to Hawk, then gently to Sadie. "Welcome to Wyoming, Miss Morgan. Hope you'll find peace here." For the first time in years, Sadie truly believed she might. The Peterson Ranch was everything Hawk had described: 500 acres of good grazing land with a sturdy, if somewhat neglected, house, a barn, and several outbuildings. With Sullivan's endorsement, the bank approved their purchase, and by mid-April of 1885 the deed was signed. "What do you think?" Hawk asked as they stood on the porch of their new home, surveying the land that stretched before them, green with the promise of spring. Sadie leaned against him, her injured shoulder healing nicely thanks to the care of Laramie's doctor. "It's perfect. It needs work, but I can see what it could be." "What we could make it," he corrected, his arm slipping around her waist. The house needed repairs: new shingles on the roof, fresh paint, a window replaced, but it was solid at its core. Like us, Sadie thought as they explored the rooms that would become their home. Damaged but not broken, stronger for having weathered storms, they fell into a rhythm of work and restoration. Hawk repaired fences and outbuildings while Sadie planted a garden and made the house livable. In the evenings, they sat on the porch watching the sunset, planning for the cattle they would buy, the crops they would plant. "I received a letter from Sullivan today," Hawk said one such evening, about a month after they'd settled in. "Federal marshals arrested Jenkins 2 weeks ago. Turns out you weren't the first woman he'd forced into his establishment. Once word got out that he was being investigated, others came forward." Sadie's hands stilled in her lap. "So it's over, really over." "It's over." Hawk took her hand. "He'll spend years in prison, if not the rest of his life." The news washed over her like a cleansing rain, rinsing away the last of the fear that had clung to her for so long. "I can hardly believe it." "Believe it." He squeezed her hand. "You're free, Sadie, truly free." That night, for the first time, they shared the bed they'd brought from town, not out of necessity as in the lined shack, but by choice. Their coming together was tender and reverent, each touch an affirmation of the love that had grown between them through danger and hardship. "I never thought I could feel this way," Sadie whispered afterward, curled against him in the darkness. "That I could trust someone so completely." Hawk's arms tightened around her. "When I found you that night, I thought I was saving you, didn't realize you were saving me too." "From what?" "From loneliness, from the emptiness I'd been carrying so long I'd stopped noticing it." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "You make me want to be better, to build something that lasts." "We will," she promised. "Together." Summer brought the cattle a small herd to start, but healthy and strong. Hawk hired 2 local boys to help with the ranch work, and Sadie took on teaching their children to read and write, finding joy in returning to the profession she'd once loved. Word spread about the new ranchers and the fair way they dealt with neighbors and hands alike. Slowly, they became part of the community, attending church in town, participating in barn raisings and harvest festivals. In the fall, Hawk asked Sadie to marry him properly, though in their hearts they had considered themselves bound to each other since the day they crossed into Wyoming. They were wed in Laramie's small church, Marshall Sullivan standing as Hawk's best man and the doctor's wife attending Sadie. "Mrs. Montgomery," Hawk said that night as they returned to their ranch, their home. The word filled Sadie with a warmth that had nothing to do with the autumn bonfire their neighbors had lit in celebration. "I like the sound of that," she replied, accepting his hand as he helped her down from the wagon. "So do I." He didn't release her hand, instead drawing her close. "I have something for you." From his pocket, he produced a small silver locket. "It was my mother's, the only other thing I have of hers besides the book of sonnets." Sadie's eyes widened as he placed it in her palm. "Hawk, I can't, you can. She would have loved you, Sadie. Your strength, your kindness." He closed her fingers around the locket. "I've been carrying this for years, waiting for the right person to give it to. That's you." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she opened the locket to find it empty. "There's no picture. I thought maybe we could put one of us inside, and someday maybe one of our children." The word children sent a flutter through Sadie's heart. "I'd like that very much." He helped her fasten the locket around her neck, then swept her into his arms to carry her across the threshold of their home, a gesture that made her laugh with delight. "You don't have to do that. We've been living here for months." "Maybe so, but now it's official." He set her down in the middle of their living room, the space transformed from the bare, neglected house they'd purchased to a warm home filled with small touches that reflected both of them. Hawk's carved wooden figurines beside Sadie's books, wildflowers in a vase she'd painted herself. As winter settled over the land, bringing snow and long evenings by the fire, Sadie discovered she was with child. The news filled Hawk with a mixture of joy and protective concern that Sadie found endearingly overwhelming. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him when he insisted on taking over her heavier chores. "Humor me," he replied, kissing her soundly. "I've waited my whole life for this, for you, for our family. Let me take care of you both." Their daughter was born the following summer, a strong, healthy girl with Hawk's blue eyes and Sadie's determined spirit. They named her Hope, for what she represented to them both. "She's perfect," Hawk whispered, holding his daughter for the first time, his usually steady hands trembling slightly. "Just like her mother." Sadie watched them from the bed, exhausted but filled with a contentment so deep it brought tears to her eyes. "She's a new beginning." "One of many," Hawk promised, sitting beside her and carefully placing Hope in her arms. The first chapter in the story were writing together. Life on the frontier was never easy. There were harsh winters and dry summers, cattle sickness and market fluctuations. But through it all, Hawk and Sadie faced each challenge side by side, their love deepening with each passing year. The ranch prospered under their care, expanding as they added more cattle and horses. Hope grew into a spirited young girl who loved riding with her father and reading with her mother. She was joined 2 years later by a brother, whom they named William after Hawk's father, a chance to reclaim a name that had once been associated with sorrow. On the 5th anniversary of the night Hawk had found Sadie bleeding in the snow, they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard, the ranch stretching out around them, testament to what they had built together. "You ever think about that night?" Sadie asked, her head resting on Hawk's shoulder. "When you found me?" "Often." His arm tightened around her. "I thank God every day that I decided to investigate that commotion instead of minding my own business." Sadie smiled, remembering the words that had changed the course of her life. "I told you I wasn't worth saving, and I told you that was a damn lie." Hawk turned to look at her, his blue eyes as clear and steady as they had been that first day. "Best truth I ever spoke. You were right." She looked out at their children, their home, the life they had created from nothing but hope and hard work. We were both worth saving. As the sun set over the Wyoming plains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Hawk kissed his wife with the same tenderness he had shown her from the beginning when he had seen value in her that she couldn't yet see in herself. In that kiss was a promise kept, a future secured, and a love that had been forged in fire and had emerged unbreakable. For Sadie and Hawk Montgomery, the true adventure hadn't been the danger they had faced or the obstacles they had overcome. It had been finding the courage to believe they deserved happiness, and then building it together one day at a time on the foundation of that first act of faith. "I love you, Xavier Montgomery," Sadie whispered against his lips. "And I love you, Sadie Montgomery," he replied. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we have left." Their story, which had begun with blood in the snow and desperate words exchanged between strangers, had transformed into something beautiful, a testament to the power of seeing worth in oneself and in others, even when the world insisted otherwise. And as they watched their children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, both knew with absolute certainty that they had found in each other not just love, but home, the place where they were always worth saving, always worth fighting for, always worth everything.